Grateful everyone is here. Let's get into this conversation about ending the employee exodus, because obviously I'm going to have all the answers to this brutal question in front of us. So what do we know? What do we know? Whether you are watching the data regarding a labor shortage or not, most of us have been impacted on some level. I recently pulled up to my local taco time. And if you're not from the Northwest region, you may have no idea what I'm talking about, but taco time has been a staple in my life since I was a child. So I pull up thinking I'm going to grab a couple tacos. I pull into the line. It's like 6 o'clock in the evening. Taco time has been open for my entire life at 6 o'clock in the evening. I pull up, I kid you not, there were cars in front of me, and the store manager comes out. She turns off the lights, and then she walks over by my truck and she goes, "Sorry, there's no taco time tonight because we don't have any employees to help serve you tonight." And then she tried to hire me out of my truck. I kid you not. She goes, "Do you want to work?" So I would say that on some level, we've experienced it personally. Maybe it's something that you've experienced in other ways, certainly, whether it's Amazon distribution centers. I know I've heard stories from people close to me this week, close to the WiLD community, who talked about, yeah, I went in to try to get this done, and there was a shortage. And so there was a sign on the door. And so it's something that has certainly affected us on multiple levels. And there are multiple narratives around the causes of this. I'm not going to hit all of them. Some of you will have a lot more and be a lot smarter on some of these narratives than I am, but let me just hit a couple. One thing that is commonly talked about is the unemployment benefit to staying home, which is funny because people don't actually know how that's affecting things when you talk to my close friends to know what's actually going on, but it's talked about. So, okay, in certain circles, people making a different choice after COVID. And primarily what I hear most often is the desire for more flexibility, which is interesting. So people staying home. And there's also this possibility that in certain cities, there may be a lack of labor in certain sectors because of an exodus of certain populations of people. Like there's all kinds of things, or people moving out to different spaces. That's come up. And then this question of people making the choice to stay home, which I'll address in just a moment as well. And I would say that in most cases, and this is my own experience of it, what I've seen in mainstream press across all sides is a focus on either companies pivoting to reactively be who employees want them to be, or a blame on the systems and governmental policies that may have caused the problem in the first place. Like you hear in all kinds of stuff around this. What if there's a bigger story? What if there's a bigger story? And I'm not denying any of those realities. So, but here's the deal about a lot of the things that are talked about are things outside of our control. So I will tell you that personally, WiLD Leaders deals with many, many, many organizations who are dealing with a labor shortage. Because we not only serve some corporations, and we also serve nonprofits and universities, but we also serve a lot of small to mid-cap companies, organizations where it's a reality. The labor shortage is a reality. Now, but what if there's a bigger story? Because I will also tell you that Daniel would say, in our own experience, that some of them are not having the same issue across the similar industries. So there is a big depends going on there. Like, what is going on? And so here's the question I have. What if instead of just thinking about the Great Resignation, we began to think about the Great Return? And when I say that, I don't mean the return of the labor force. What I mean is the return to our roots. And what if instead of focusing our attention on finding employees and talent, we started thinking about being that place that the right talent would want to work? And I'll tell you I'm going to unpack some interesting research about this in just a second. And I want to say this very clear. When I said we started thinking about being that place that the right talent will want to work, not for the sake of being that place, but because it's who we are. So as soon as we do it for the sake of being that place, I think we lose track of being that place. You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as we start focusing on that, the best advice, here's my example. The best advice I ever heard on finding a spouse was to stop looking so hard for a spouse and to start being the potential spouse that the right person would actually want to marry. Here's the tricky part of that. Let go of the anxiety of the search that makes you unattractive and desperate in the first place. Okay, now I know some of you are like, wait, you may have like marriage and family expertise and you're way beyond, way outside of mine right now, but I think you know what I mean. To maybe be the person of character you're called to be, serving others, knowing yourself, editing, changing, and learning. Like all of it, like being yourself, but also being willing to change yourself and thinking about that. In the same way, what would change if you stopped anxiously searching and talking about all the wrong things and you got recentered? And so I know I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but at the same time, this is such an interesting way to look at it. I want to put a vision out there for you. What I want for every organization, and I've wanted this for years, within the influence of WiLD leaders, was to help them get back to their roots. And if that happened, would the right people come to work? At least it's a maybe. You know what I'm saying? At least it's a maybe. Even for my sons, what's interesting about this is that word travels fast. When they were in high school, and they're now both freshmen and sophomores in college, word travels very fast across high schools and across communities about the places that are better to work at. It's so interesting, and it's fascinating because when my sons were in high school, when they first started looking for jobs, it was all about the money. I'm telling you, and they still have a little bit of this where they're like, well, so-and-so pays $17 an hour, which I'm always like, $17 an hour. Like, you can make $17. Let me tell you both ways that I walked uphill to work when I went to work. But it's just funny. It's in the snow, right? Deep snow. But it was that's what they talk about. They're like, and I kind of let it go. $17.50, you know, so-and-so pays that. And then they got their first job. And it was, I've told this story before, but it's too good not to tell again. My son goes to work for a grocery store. He meets his manager on the first day of work. He's not sure what to do because he's wandering around the grocery store. He goes up to his manager and he says, hey, I've finished all the things. I'm not sure what I should do now. This is what the manager said to him. He said, hey, I'm 40 years old. I'm working in a grocery store. So you can either shoot yourself in your head or you can go fluff the chip bags. I kid you not. And it's a great story like that. There's a whole movie in that thing. I just was like, I loved it. I kind of hated it. The guy said that, but I kind of loved it too, because we've all had that experience, right? With that manager. And my son started to realize, both of them, like, there's more than just that extra $1 an hour. And so I want to get into that for just a little bit. Like, what would change if we were becoming known as this great organization? And what if that's as simple as becoming the organization you always wish you were in the first place? Or the leader who was that in the first place? And maybe stop trying to find the right employees and spending most of our time becoming the organization where the right people would want to work. But not doing it for the sake of that, but doing it for the sake of getting back to our roots and being that person. And here's, so let's keep going. So how do you become that place? Some of you are thinking, oh, that's a great idea. So that's interesting. So the narrative you'll see out there is that people want flexibility. So be more flexible. The people reevaluated during COVID and decided to stay home. Or they decided to do their own thing. If any of you are business owners, doing your own thing is a lot harder than it sounds. And doing it well, Daniel's laughing right now. Like, as business leaders ourselves, responsible for it all. I'm not trying to dissuade some of you from doing that, but it's to do it well is a lot of work. You got legal, you got finance, you got IP, you got trademarks, you got, there are things, you got payroll, there's things to think about. And so as we get into this here, I want to explain to you something that is, some of you, there's a few PhDs on this who know this research I'm about to describe to you. I want to describe to you some research from a man named Hertzberg. All right. And I'm going to tell you this because we always drop a little IO psychology into this conversation, but it's interesting. And here's what Hertzberg found. And I'm going to get into the critiques as well that I think offer us something in this moment. This research found, think about the concept of job satisfaction. Okay. And I want you to think about job satisfaction and dissatisfaction. Prior to Hertzberg's research, there was an assumption that was one continuous scale. All right. So dissatisfaction would be a -5, and then it goes all the way to a +5. All right, you're with me? So it's like this, I hate my job is a -5. I could not love my job more. It would be, I'm oversimplifying, it would be a +5. The -5 is I hate my job. Here's what Hertzberg proposed and did some research around. This concept that the things that keep you from being dissatisfied are different from the things that will make you satisfied. So in other words, he found that it was interesting that there's a difference between the things that will get you from a -5 to a 0 than the things that will get you from a 0 to a +5. All right, are you with me? Different predictors of that. And he called them hygiene factors and motivators. Here's what's kind of so it means that like there's a different set of things that will get me from I cannot stand this job to job's okay. I'm not going to complain. You know what I mean? And then there's a different set that would say like where Veronica and Dean and Helen are going, this job, you got to come work here. You don't come for free. It's amazing. So that there was this different set of things. And I'll tell you that one of the things that I'm telling you, and some of you who are educated around this whole concept, you know, Hertzberg, when I went out and we're working with real leaders every day, there is a common assumption. The common assumption in many, many organizations is that it's mostly about pay. Okay, it's mostly about money. And what Hertzberg found was that money was a hygiene factor. Money, it's not that money doesn't matter. And Nathan Iverson's going, there's all kinds of research around compensation, but it's not that money doesn't matter, but it's that money will get you to a 0, but it'll never get you to a 5. All right. So there's a different thing. So what gets you to a 5? Well, one of the big things, I'm going to oversimplify all these variables, was meaningful work. Place where your manager sees you. That what Hertzberg didn't have that language. That's Rob's language, but it's like where someone actually sees you. And when I say sees you, understands where you want to be stretched or not, or knows what you care about. A supervisor who actually pays attention to you. Those kinds of things. An organization that's supportive that might provide stretch if that's what you're looking for. Here's the critique of Hertzberg's work over the years was that one of the main critiques is that it was done on average populations of people. And so it was based on averages as opposed to sort of seeing the unique contribution of each person. And another theory that's called expectancy theory was used to critique Hertzberg because expectancy is one of the primary factors within that is that you need to, in order to motivate people, you need to understand what they value. And this idea that different people value different things. Here's where I think Hertzberg had it right. So if different people value different things, what if we were not looking for just a labor force? But we were looking for the right labor force. You know what I mean? Where we actually were paying attention to what individuals, we aren't just looking for anybody. We're looking for people who are about what we're about. And the only way we're going to connect meaningfulness is if we know what's meaningful in the work that we do. If we knew what that was about. This example, I can't help but tell the story. So yesterday I'm in the gym. To be honest, I was kind of I don't know if you ever spend any time in gyms, they can be very lonely places. So I was just kind of feeling alone, kind of down. I'm sitting there on the treadmill, kind of thinking about today, thinking about this conversation. And this guy that I see that works there, I'm almost positive he's not a manager. What I also know about him is that I think he was a Marine because he wears Marine stuff. Like he wears clothes that are, let's say US Marines on him. So, but what's crazy about this guy is I cannot believe the level of care he provides for my gym. And he walked behind me and I turned around and he did not, I knew he was going somewhere else. So he was headed to the bathrooms and he was greeting people at the front desk and he said hi to me when I walked. He's not particularly nice, but he like other people, but he's fine. But I watched him picking up little pieces of garbage off the floor on his way to the bathroom. And I thought to myself, like, that guy is a gem. Like, where in the world? Like, I thought my gym should know you're not just looking for labor, you're looking for a bunch of those people. Like where he's in this moment, and it makes you think about who is the person who would fit with what the need is among the people that we serve. And it changes. And y'all are going to say, like, I tried to see him. I tried to say thank you at the end. As soon as I see him alone, but he was, of course, at the front desk was serving 3 people who had a lot of questions. So he didn't have time for me. So I'm going to find a place to definitely thank him. But think about this, the Great Resignation, the Big Quit, the employee exodus, whatever we call it, it has called out something that we already knew. Work isn't just work, and it isn't just about money. Not for everybody anyway. As human beings, most of us are wired to be a part of something missional and sacrificial, and we are wired to do that together. And the longer view action will be to double down on the systematic investment in the courageous and sacrificial people who are with us. And soon, every one of our organizations would be known for it, and all the right people will want to work for us. And I'm not saying it's not to focus on that solution, but to say, like, what if we got back to basics? And I'll tell you that it's so, I'd asked one of the CEOs that we work with this week, I said, who is your greatest source of employees? Because they're dealing with a huge shortage. They've got a bunch of open FTE roles. And he said, you know what he's going to say? He said, it's our people. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what industry we're talking about, whether we're talking about excavators, salespeople, professors, university staff, the guy at my gym. We work with all these kinds of organizations, weird nonprofits. Some of them are doing a little bit better during this season, and it's because those places have been recentered. And here's the issue is that if there's anything that the wilderness of this reality that's affecting so many of you or your friends, if there's one thing that the wilderness of this reality offers us, is we know we got to think about it. And the downside of the labor coming back, whatever that means, is that we will stop thinking about what's most important, because now they're just back. And so the opportunity is now, because the pressure of the shortage, that it's real or not, that's being perceived or not, that we're experiencing as customers or not, or as owners of businesses, is it's causing the reactive to constrict and the experts to blame. But I think there's hope, and it's causing the courageous and sacrificial to expand and deepen their roots right in the midst of this wilderness. And I think the opportunity is now, right now. So, and I want this for the organizations that you serve. Like, what word spreads fast in high schools? Do you think it spreads fast in other industries? At dinner tables, as Daniel was saying, we were talking about this before, like people go home and they talk about work. And so then some of you are saying, so Rob, okay, that's a lot of big thinking. Like, what do I do? I have some ideas that I hope inspire. And you all know this. I have to say it. I'm living this. Not a shortage at WiLD Leaders, but this is something I don't have all the answers, but I think together we'll get to some of these things. So here are some of you want some practical things. Number one, become the mission-focused organization you always wanted to be in the first place, or to work for. And if you work within a system that you're saying it's not that, then create that mission within the team that you lead. Like, I'll back you up in that. Like, let's create that place. Focus on being the great place to work instead of desperately finding those who want to work. Because the reality is desperation isn't attractive anyway. You know, in most cases. I think also, here's another thing, is that adopt a long-term perspective. The attrition rate over the long haul is hovering right around 100%. Everyone's going to leave at some point. They will leave, or they will die, or they will leave at the right time, or they'll come at the right time. So in the long haul, they will return. And the problem of whether we're doing meaningful things will still be there. Like, if we've gotten back to the roots of why we're in this in the first place. Number three, invest in whole leaders. I said it before, from excavators to farmers to chefs to greeters to salespeople to university staff to consultants to technology. We are seeing that these organizations that got back to who they were, they're kind of attractive places to work. There is labor out there, but you don't want just anybody anyway. You don't want to hire a bunch of people that don't fit out of that reactivity. It probably won't work in the long haul. Number four, be the story your employees want to tell to others. Be the story that your employees want to tell to others. And it's not all about the money. Those of you that have that narrative, it's just not. The research doesn't support it. Number five, be patient. Attracting the right people and becoming that organization takes time. And if you're inside an organization that's frustrating to you, you know, it takes time. And then I'll put this last thing out there before you go out and have some really smart conversations around this and share with each other, inspire each other, is this. If you are an organization, a current client of ours or not, and you're saying, I want to know more about this. How do I do this? How do I create that kind of a culture? How do I begin to invest in my people? Call Daniel Halleck. And I'm saying that this is not a business like urging. I'm just like, this is what we do. It's what we've done for years. And it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes a long-term investment. But if any of this is triggering that for you, just call Dan. You can see him on your screen. Not Daniel. He's right there. Okay. So let's get out into conversations and get wiser together.
Awesome.